Every turn-based tactics game adds randomness to create tension. XCOM has a 95% hit chance that misses and makes you want to throw your keyboard. Into the Breach removed all randomness from combat. No hit percentages, no damage ranges, no critical hits. Every attack does exactly what it says, and it's the most nerve-wracking tactics game ever made. 2 people built it. It won Best Design at the Game Developers' Choice Awards. GameSpot gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. It was the highest rated PC game of 2018. Here's why removing the dice rolls was the best design decision of the decade. Into the Breach is a turn-based tactics game where you pilot 3 giant mechs against an army of giant bugs called the Vec. It was made by Subset Games, J. Ma, and Matthew Davis, the same 2 developers who made FTL Faster Than Light, one of the most influential indie games ever released. They're a 2-person studio. Into the Breach is their second game. It plays on an 8x8 grid. Every enemy telegraphs their next attack before it happens. You see exactly where they'll strike, how much damage they'll deal, and what they'll hit. Then you move your mechs and respond. That's the whole game. And it's brilliant. Here's how a mission works. You deploy 3 mechs on an 8x8 grid. The Vec show you their intentions. Red arrows pointing at buildings, at your mechs, at empty tiles. You get 1 move and 1 weapon per mech per turn. You study the board, figure out the solution, and execute. New Vec spawn after your turn. The mission ends after a fixed number of turns. The goal isn't to kill all the Vec. It's to protect civilian buildings that power your mech squad. Lose too many buildings and your power grid fails. Between missions, you choose which islands to defend, each with different hazards and rewards. You spend resources on weapon upgrades, new equipment, and pilot skills. If your power grid hits 0, you can send 1 pilot back in time with their experience and start a new timeline. It's a roguelike loop with deterministic combat. Every run teaches you something because every outcome was your fault. The first design decision that makes this game work is perfect information. Every enemy attack is telegraphed. You see it before you act. There are no mischances, no damage variance, no random crits. If your weapon says it does 3 damage, it does 3 damage. Every single time. If your mech pushes an enemy 1 tile, it moves exactly 1 tile. Guaranteed outcomes, every action, every turn. You never have to wonder what will happen. The question is what you do about it. Most tactics games use randomness as a tension tool. XCOM gives you a 95% hit chance because the 5% miss creates drama, but that drama comes from a place the player can't control. When you miss that shot, you feel cheated. You did everything right, you flanked, you had height advantage, you calculated the odds, and the game said no. The tension came from uncertainty, and so did the frustration. You're not outsmarting the enemy, you're gambling against the engine, and sometimes the engine wins. Slay the Spire ran into a similar problem during development. The original design didn't show enemy intentions, attacks were hidden, players were confused about which cards to play because they had no context. The developers added the intent system, icons showing what each enemy would do next turn, and the game clicked. Players could plan, they could strategize. The same thing happened with Into the Breach, except Subset went further. They didn't just show intentions, they made every combat action deterministic. No dice at all. Into the Breach replaces RNG uncertainty with responsibility. When a building gets destroyed, it's not because you were unlucky, it's because you made the wrong call. You chose to save the mech instead of the building. You prioritized killing a Vec over pushing another one off its attack line. You saw every threat coming and you couldn't solve all of them. That's a different kind of tension, and it's more satisfying because it's yours. Every outcome is a direct result of your decisions. There's nobody to blame and nothing to rage about, just you and the board. The designers compared the game to chess. It's not about overpowering the enemy. It's about position control and sacrifice. You look at the board, you see the threats, and you find the best sequence of moves. Sometimes there's no perfect solution. Sometimes you have to choose which building to sacrifice. That choice, knowing exactly what will happen and still having to pick, is the most tense moment in any tactics game I've played, and it works because the game told you everything. No surprises, just decisions. Here's the principle for your game. If your combat relies on randomness for excitement, try removing it. Strip out the hit percentages and the damage ranges. Make every action have a fixed, predictable outcome. Then playtest. If the game becomes boring, your design was using RNG as a crutch. If it becomes more engaging like Into the Breach does, you've found a deeper kind of tension, the kind where the player owns every outcome. The kind where losing feels fair because you can trace every failure back to a specific choice you made. The second design decision is making position the primary weapon. In most tactics games, weapons deal damage and positioning determines who you can hit. Into the Breach flips this completely. Many of the best weapons don't deal damage at all. They push enemies, they pull them, they reposition them on the grid. A weapon that shoves a Vec 1 tile doesn't sound powerful until you realize that pushing a Vec off its attack line means a building survives. Pushing a Vec into water kills it instantly, no damage roll needed. Pushing a Vec into another Vec blocks both of them from attacking because now they're occupying the same space and the game resolves the collision. The game's most satisfying moments come from one action solving three problems at once. You push a Vec off a building into a second Vec that was about to attack a different building, and the collision kills the pushed Vec because it lands in water. One move, three outcomes, and you feel like a genius. Subset games built entire mech squads around this idea. The Rift Walkers are your starter squad, straightforward, balanced, but then you unlock squads like the Blitzkrieg, which chains lightning through multiple enemies if you position them in a line. The Steel Judoka, built around moving enemies into each other. The Frozen Titans, who freeze enemies to buy time. Every squad changes how you think about the grid because every squad has different tools for manipulating position. There are 14 squads in the Advanced Edition, and each one teaches you something different about the same 8x8 board. The 8x8 grid makes all of this work. On a large battlefield, push mechanics are weak, too much open space, too many escape routes. On 8x8, every single tile matters. Every push has consequences. Every position is either a solution or a disaster waiting to happen. There's nowhere to hide. The small grid turns positioning into a puzzle with clear constraints, and clear constraints are what make puzzles solvable. 64 tiles sounds limiting. It's not. It's the reason the game works. For your game, this means design combat around where things are, not just how much damage they deal. Give players tools to move, push, redirect, and reposition enemies and allies. Make the grid small enough that position matters every turn. A weapon that moves an enemy 2 tiles is more interesting than a weapon that does 20 damage, because it opens up multi-solution puzzles instead of binary kill or don't kill checks. Damage is a number, position is a decision. The third decision is the one most players don't notice consciously, but designers should study closely. Collateral damage is the real enemy. In most tactics games, you kill the enemies, you win, threat eliminated, board cleared. Into the Breach's real threat isn't the Vec, it's the buildings. Civilian structures power your mechs through a grid system. If too many get destroyed, your power grid fails and you lose the campaign. The Vec are the obstacle, the buildings are the objective. This changes everything about how you prioritize. Sometimes the right play is to not kill a Vec at all. You push it off its attack line so it misses the building. The Veek survives, but the building survives too, and that's what matters. You block a spawn point with your mech, taking damage yourself to prevent something worse from appearing next turn. You sacrifice a mech entirely to save a civilian structure because that building powers your grid for the rest of the campaign, and one mech isn't worth losing the whole war. Every mission is a triage decision. You can't save everything. What do you let burn? J. Mag got this idea from watching movies like Man of Steel and Pacific Rim. He said the whole city gets demolished in those films, but no one cares because the good guys won. He wanted players to care about the collateral damage. He made the buildings matter mechanically. They power your grid and narratively. Chris Avellone wrote the story to reinforce this. The game tells you that people are sheltering in those buildings. When a building collapses, it isn't an abstract grid square disappearing. It's weight on your decisions. The power grid number dropping is the game's health bar, and every building lost inches it closer to zero. This is the design insight most devs miss. Your game stakes don't have to be the obvious enemy. Adding a secondary objective that conflicts with the primary one creates richer decisions than any single goal ever could. Kill all enemies is a flat objective. Kill all enemies while protecting civilians is a puzzle. You don't need to copy the building mechanic exactly. You need the conflict, two things you care about that pull in opposite directions, three principles you can take from Into the Breach into your own project. First, try removing randomness from your combat resolution. Strip out hit percentages, damage ranges, and crit multipliers. Make every action predictable. If tension drops, your design was leaning on RNG as a crutch. If tension increases, you found something better. Player-owned outcomes where every loss is traceable to a specific decision. Second, make position matter more than damage. Give players tools to manipulate where enemies and allies are on the grid. push, pull, swap, freeze, redirect. Small battlefields where every tile counts create better decisions than large ones with room to maneuver. Third, add a conflicting objective. Two goals that pull in opposite directions make every turn a real choice instead of an obvious one. Protect this while destroying that. Save these people while eliminating that threat. The conflict is the design. If you're building any kind of turn-based game, tactics, strategy, RPG combat, roguelike encounters, these three ideas are the architecture that makes Into the Breach the gold standard. Deterministic combat, position-focused mechanics, conflicting objectives. Two people built this on a grid of 64 tiles and it won Best Design at GDC. And here's where AI tools change the game. You can prototype a deterministic combat system with telegraphed enemy attacks in an afternoon using Claude Code or Cursor. The core grid manager, the intent display, the push mechanics, that's a few hundred lines of code that an AI can scaffold while you focus on the design decisions. The most powerful application is automated scenario testing. Define a tactical scenario, 3 mechs, 5 vec with telegraphed attacks, 2 buildings to protect. Have AI search for a solution. If it finds one, the scenario is fair. If it can't, it's too hard. That's playtesting that would take a human weeks, done in minutes. You can generate hundreds of enemy spawn patterns and verify each one is solvable. You can test weapon balance by running thousands of simulated encounters. A solo dev with AI tools can build an Into the Breach caliber tactics game in days instead of months. We're building exactly this kind of AI-accelerated game system inside AI Craft, the deterministic combat, the position mechanics, the solvability testing. Come join the community and build with us. Please feel free to subscribe and check out the links in the description below.